Feel like you're running on the hamster wheel and busy comes out of your mouth more than anything else, then this episode is for you. I'm joined by Kevin Kepple today to talk through why we get stuck in this busy mindset and how we can kind of pull ourselves out into a leadership mode. And leadership, no matter what level you're at, if you're just starting out your organization, if you're a fundraiser in a larger organization, if you're growing and scaling, if you're interacting with the board, doesn't matter where you are. We can think creatively and be the best versions of ourselves to show up and make bigger impact in our organizations. And that's what Kevin is here to talk with us about today. Kevin Kepple is a business coach and leadership educator who has the most fun, aside from being in the mountains, when he is teaching leaders how to become the heroes of their lives. Kevin has built his own successful business through dynamic leadership. He leads a powerful and cohesive team and has learned many of these lessons the hard way. So anything he can do to help you avoid the same pitfalls, he'd love to share. And he does share just that. I think you'll really enjoy his perspective on how we don't just focus on our professional selves, but who we are as individuals and why we're doing the work that we're doing and how we can make the biggest impact inside of our organizations. So I hope that you'll listen to this episode and really take it in and don't think it's too woo-woo, because it's really not. It's more just about listening to ourselves and figuring out how we can have our best lives while doing great in this world. But before we get into this episode, it is brought to you by the Online Fundraising Virtual Summit. We start on October 24th, so it's just around the corner. So grab your free ticket at onlinefundraisingsummit.com, where you can learn how to build your monthly donor giving program, have more sustainability in your fundraising, and know what's coming in month after month. So again, onlinefundraisingsummit.com. It's a free five-day summit with more than 20 speakers, and it's going to be awesome. I hope to see you there. Let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hey, everybody, please join me in welcoming Kevin Kepple to the podcast. Kevin, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, pumped to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah. So why do you think that people just get stuck in busy? Like busy is the buzzword, right? Like, I'm so busy. And we hear this all the time. But why do you think that we just kind of get stuck in that mode?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I was actually just talking to an attorney a little bit earlier about busy is the badge of honor. It's like, I'm the busiest person that's ever been busy before. Watch this. And it's so hard when you're in that busy place because you can, work all day long and really not create a lot. And you're more like compulsively reacting to the things in front of you. And like, it's much more conducive to the goals that we have and the life we want to live to be productive as opposed to busy. And, I didn't create a business and, build it to where I have it now. It's just so I could be busy all the time. I did it so I could be productive and create more for, myself, my family, and the people and the clients that I get to serve. And, there's a big distinction between busy and productive. I don't think those are the same thing. And, I think the reason that one of the reasons people get stuck in the busy is really not, there's kind of like 4 pillars of genius that work on with my clients. And when they just don't have the 4 pillars kind of lined up, and it starts with connection, being connected, to ourselves first, and really, using that connection to, our most authentic self to create clarity of purpose on what we really want to do and how we really want to do that. And, when you have a connection that's, leads to clarity naturally, and they kind of build synergy together. And that is powerful because it allows you to really be creative. And, creative is the goal, because when I'm creating, I'm striving for uniqueness. And what? I've got the market cornered on me. There's only one me, right? Just like, there's only one Sammy, and like, that's our genius. And if I'm not creating, then I'm simply competing. And if I'm competing, I'm striving to be like someone else. And I can't ever win your way. Creativity never copies itself. It can rhyme for sure, but I think people just get stuck in that trap because, they have either models, of parents or teachers or friends that do things, a certain way. And then they think that busy is winning, and they get stuck on autopilot and like, well, I've always been this way. I'm like, awesome. Well, if you don't like it, it's changeable, right?
Yeah. Well, and how much about busy do you think is kind of that combination of either I don't think I'm a creative person, because I think when we hear creativity, we assume it has to be like writing or artistic or whatever, but really creative is just thinking outside the box and finding new solutions to something that solves a problem, right? And like combining that with, so I don't think that I'm creative, but also this is the way it's always been done. So that's how I'm taught. Like, don't you think busy kind of plays into both of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think busy is like the call sign of that ego that, the self-made me, so to speak, because, and, ego is not always malicious and narcissistic, but,
Hmm.
it's really afraid of any change. The ego has to know, it has to know what's next. And creativity is always a little risky, right? To go into the unknown,
Yeah.
you're literally creating something that's never existed. Even if you're just creating the outfit you're wearing for the day, right? That's still creation, like everybody creates something. And, people say that, some of my clients have heard it, frequently. It's like, I'm not creative. I'm like, I have trouble believing that. Like, who dressed you today, right? Like, let's start there. And, like you said, it doesn't have to be painting, writing, whatever. Like, just what do you like to do? Like, what brings you joy? And
Mhm.
that's a big part of that connection and clarity is like finding out, like, hey, what does bring me joy? Because joy is simply love expressed. And, that's the truth of us. We were created in, this infinite love. And when I'm operating from that place, not in like not even like woo woo or like obviously not romantic love, but just like an unconditional,
Mhm.
a love for myself and a love for more. And it's powerful when you live in that place because it allows you to really have grace, grace for yourself and grace for other people. Because you know what, we're all just figuring it out as we go along. And every single thing looks messy in the middle. And so, just
Yeah.
having, grace for ourselves and just, creating. And you know what? Like, man, one of the things that used to trip me up and it trips a lot of people up is lacking that ability to say, I don't know, I don't know. And I need help.
Mhm.
And it took me 30 years to get there, but I finally did. And you know what? It's so powerful because I'm really good at, some certain things. Like I'm really good at, coaching experts and helping them get to world class. Like that's my genius, right? I am terrible at fishing. I am terrible at cooking, right? But that's okay. I'm not a professional bass fisherman. I'm not a chef. And so, saying I don't know and having people support me and that gives me more time to express my genius. I think that's how you really stay out of that busy trap.
Yeah. So what is the influence equation and how does that kind of help us get through that and like really building on our leadership and zone of genius?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love to really break it down, the influence equation, because it's such a simple idea to remember. And that's the genius of simple is simple ideas are remembered, simple ideas are repeated, because complexity always leads us to confusion. And, I work with lots of different types of leaders, and the ones who struggle all have this one thing in common is that they kind of work the influence equation backwards. And so really the equation is three pieces. It's trust, connection, vision. And a lot of the leaders that are younger, especially I did when I was a younger leader, we start at the back end. We start sharing the vision. And like, all right, here's what we want. Here's where we're going. Go get it. And then you just walk off, right? And, people may do it, but not for long. And if it gets hard, they're probably going to quit because they're not connected to it. And, like when you start with trust, though, it's really pretty profound because trust lets people know that they're safe. And if I'm, again, going to be risky and going to creativity, I need to know I'm safe to be vulnerable and safe to say, I don't know. And, that's one of the questions like all people are asking of the leader internally. It's like, first is like, do you like me? Because if I feel like the leader doesn't like me, I definitely don't feel safe. Right. And then it's like, can I trust you? Can you help me get what I want? Is what's important to me important to you? And, the more that you show up authentically and, exhibit all those really powerful leadership traits like empathy, selflessness, authenticity, decisiveness, and accountability, the really fab five there, that really builds a connection. And, when people feel connected to you and you show them that, what's important to them is important to you and how, the company or the organization or even like whatever your vision is, how that supports their vision for their life. That's when people get really connected to the overall vision. And that's when the real power starts because when you have that influence equation satisfied, people, trust you, the leader. They trust themselves too, right? And feel
Mhm.
connected to themselves, connected to you. That's when people start co-creating on the vision. And it's so beautiful because like, it doesn't matter if it's a little league team or a billion-dollar company. The way that you win at a high level is when people grow as individuals and they grow together as a team. And that's co-elevation. And that's the big
Mhm.
result you get from that influence equation when it's worked properly.
And I mean, like that could be something as simple as like when you have team meetings, people having like even just building within your team that opportunity to just throw out ideas and be creative together without fear of judgment or, you know, saying, hey, I've got this great idea, I want to run with it. It might fail, but it could be awesome. Like kind of all of those types of things, right? Empowering your team to kind of show up, because when they have all of those things that you just mentioned, then the passion and the sharing of the vision just comes naturally.
Yeah,
Is that
for
what I'm
sure.
hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's such a great point that you made. And is letting people know that they're safe. Like improv, if you ever take an improv class, pretty much day one is like, you never say no, because you break the scene, but you always, no matter what people say, you can always say yes. And it's like, yes. And so even if it's maybe quite possibly the worst idea you've ever heard, you can still say yes, right? It's like, hey, I think we should, give all our money away and burn the building down and start all over. Like, yes, I love that you're being creative. And how can we make that idea better? Because
Yeah.
maybe we shouldn't do some of those things, right? But I don't ever want to make people feel less than. And like, so what if it's not the best idea ever? There's been a lot of ideas that if I was the first one to hear it, I probably would have shut it down. Like the idea of Uber Eats or something. Like, yeah, we're gonna have random strangers bring you food that you've never met, and they're gonna drop it off at your door. And I'm like, yeah, right. That's never gonna happen, But I mean, I think they're doing okay at Uber. I guess they're gonna make it.
Yeah.
But just letting people use that great word, empowering, right? It's really that's the whole goal of the leader, is to empower and inspire. Because if you inspire me, you're stimulating me to action. You empower me. You help me to know what to do with the stimulation you gave me, and it's very empowering to understand that you're safe and safe to make mistakes, safe to play and even have fun. And yeah, we're doing business, but it doesn't mean it has to be like super serious, right? Like nobody's going to die on the table if we make a huge mistake, in most companies.
Right. So as we work through, because if we, we get in this creative mode, and the whole goal of kind of removing ourselves from busy and kind of building this team is to like open up that creativity in us to like further our business and kind of reach our goals. But how do we kind of move through just brainstorming? Like, how do we then not have that creative part take over and make us feel more busy, because now we have all of these ideas? Like, how do we kind of transform that into action?
Sure. Yeah, we can't just sit around and talk philosophy all day long.
I mean, that would
right?
be amazing if we could make money doing that, but I don't think that's the case right now.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Like, no, we don't have to do anything. We just talk about ideas all day, and people bring us money. It's great. So if that's your company, please let me know. I'd be interested to learn more. But on the serious side, like naturally people are more pragmatic or more philosophical. Right brain, left brain, and my dad was a CPA, so definitely left brained and very pragmatic and just great at the steps. And he's like, I don't really need the emotion, and I'd kind of come from the other side, and it's really powerful when you can light up people's whole brain, so to speak, and really talk to the pragmatic side and that philosophical side. And so, yeah, I need to understand, the philosophy behind it, but I need to understand what's the concrete steps here. And that's where that clarity comes in, because when we have a clear purpose, it's like, pretty easy little litmus test. Like, does this step we're about to, embark on, does it bring us closer to our goal? Yes or no? Mm-hmm. And, if it's a no, then you need to pivot and figure out something else or figure out why or whatever. And it's really important that, if you're not a super pragmatic thinker or really good at execution or whatever like that, you have people around you that can support you and fill in some of the gaps that you may have.
So let's say you're not a leader at your organization, but you're hearing all these things and you're like, these are my frustrations. Like, I have all these ideas. I have all these things that I want to do. My leadership just has me kind of running the hamster wheel right now. Like, how could you maybe, because I do believe, and I think you might too, that we can be leaders in our jobs regardless of our quote unquote title, right? So how might we take some of these and start to use them to transform our job role, or maybe even, kind of broach these topics with leadership? Is that something that can happen, or is that just kind of a losing battle?
Yeah, no, I think it's
possible. It's different in every situation, but.
Sure. And that was going to be pretty much verbatim what I was going to say next. But yeah, no, don't be sorry. That's great. I'm glad you said it, because, it's always different, but there's definitely some things that we can do to heighten the probability of success. And leadership is not a position. like, John Maxwell, leadership expert, has written like 100 books on leadership. And one of my favorite books that he wrote is The 5 Levels of Leadership. And level 1 is, the lowest level, and 5 is the highest. And level 1 leadership is just, leading by position. Like, I'm the manager, I'm in charge, do this because I said so. Like, that is not leadership. That's telling people what to do. That's management, right? And so it's really important to understand, like, it doesn't matter if, you're the newest person in a company of 1,000, right? Like, leadership is a behavior. It's not really a position. And you know what? Like, I don't get to call myself a leader, right? That's like me showing up like, hey, what's up, Sammy? Hey, by the way, I'm pretty funny. And, I don't get to call myself funny. If you're not laughing at my jokes, then I'm not very funny, right? And if nobody's empowered or inspired or, following me or whatever, then I'm probably not a leader. And so, first off, I think it's really important to understand that, it's how you show up and, how, quote unquote, you act when people aren't watching, right? People are always watching, but, leadership can be as simple as picking up trash when nobody's around, like that's a big thing. Like there's a guy that lives down the street, and I walk my dog in the mornings. I see him out there. He's an older guy. I think he's retired. And so he's out there picking up trash and like, just really cool, and stop and help him sometimes. And he's like, really nice. He's like, yeah, I just like to help. And like, man, you're cool. So, that's leadership right there. It inspired me to help him. And, it's pretty powerful. And so I think, getting really clear on, your values and how your values line up with the organization you're in, and, going to, whoever your leader may be, and, just asking questions like, hey, what could I do to, make a bigger impact here? I'd really, like to, lead from my position if possible, or, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And so I know we talk a lot about kind of like bringing in the creative side. So if I'm somebody who's like, well, I like a formula, like your dad, who's a CPA, if I'm a more analytical person, I like the structure, but I'm kind of stagnant in my job, or my business isn't growing, and I know I need to be a little bit more creative in order to kind of go to the next step. Do you have any tools or tips for how we might kind of unleash the inner creative inside of us, or kind of step into that if it feels very uncomfortable for us?
Yeah. Well, first off, being uncomfortable is great, because that probably means that you're about to grow, because you're about to do something you haven't done. And that's really, really powerful. And the more you go into that, uncomfortable place outside your comfort zone, right, the more comfortable you'll be being uncomfortable. And, one of the tips is just start doing things you haven't done before, right? And teach yourself that you can learn new things. Whether, for me, like if I learned to cook, right, that would be something that'd be hard for me, right? Like, I went a couple of weeks ago with one of my clients on Saturday. He's like, hey, dude, you want to go jump off an airplane? I'm like, sure. Like, I knew that would be hard for me. I'd done it once before, but it doesn't make it any easier. It's a pretty odd thing when you're, up at 15,000 feet and you just watch people just jump out the door and they're gone like they never existed. And then you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to go next. And it's pretty wild. And, you learn a lot about yourself when you do things like that. And, like it could be as simple as sitting down and journaling, man. Like, so we all hear that all the time. Journal, right? There's a reason. But how many people actually do it? Every single time I do it, I feel better. And there's still resistance there. And so that's one of the cool things you can do is look for the resistance, because resistance usually shows up in 2 spots, right? Resistance, that invisible wall that stops us from doing things. It's, the things we need to do the least and the things that maybe we should do the most. That's kind of where resistance is, right? Like if I was thinking about going to play in traffic at rush hour, right, on the highway, a lot of resistance there. That's good resistance. But if I'm, going to write or maybe do a video for social media and I've never done that, there'd be a lot of resistance there, right? But that's good, because you're going to get massive growth. And, really, I think the most important thing when it comes to creativity is learning to detach from the outcome. Because if I have these expectations of, how people should be when they see this, or how I should be, or whatever, then that's so dangerous, because for one, I just gave myself one way to win. And how do I even know that's the way I want to win? And then if it doesn't line up exactly the way that, you perceived it ahead of time, then you've failed, right? And then, you make this story and identity about failure that's not even true. And, if you're not getting knocked down and failing on a regular basis, like, then maybe you need to like set your bar a little higher, because if everything's easy, then you're not going very big.
Yeah, we have this conversation in my business mastermind all the time, because we see it's mostly, well, it is all female entrepreneurs, but, we see they branched out and now they're pushing their boundaries and they're doing more, and their business is growing. And all of a sudden they'll show up and they'll be like, I just had this person who was hating on me and telling me that, like, they've got their first kind of hater or troll on social media. And we all celebrate that, because we're like, well, you did it. Like you got to the point where people are paying attention to you, and somebody is, upset. Like, you're not doing it right if somebody's not upset with something. It doesn't have to be major, but right. I mean,
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
to continue to push that boundary to continue to grow.
I think that is a phenomenal point you just made, Sammy. It's like if you're not rubbing somebody the wrong way, then you're pandering to the middle and you're pandering to average. And if you want to be above average, you have to treat yourself above average. And what that means is you have to take a stand and you need to start moving towards one of the edges. Hey, like spoiler alert, you guys, like you're not for everybody. I'm not for everybody. And that's okay. If I try to be for everybody, I end up spending a lot of time around people that maybe just I don't build a lot of synergy with, and that doesn't make them bad people or me wrong or right or whatever. But it's it's really important that you understand what you do stand for, and own that.
Well, and our audience is largely nonprofit, and I know back in my fundraising days, like we would spend hours like with meetings with people that like somebody connected us to, whatever, but they weren't the right fit. And so I think that's the fear for a lot of people is like, well, if I don't take all these donor meetings, if I don't try to get donations from everybody, my organization is going to fail. And so this relates to that in kind of the same way, right? And like if we can really hone in on where we want to go and who's an ideal donor and who's going to be the right fit for our program, you'll probably make more money with less effort, which goes back to your original point of we don't just have to be busy doing things. We can actually have a successful business and not work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I like that. I start with connection, right? Being connected to ourselves so we can really get clarity on what is important to us. And that really allows us to get that explosive creativity and kind of that fourth pillar. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but the fourth pillar of owning your genius, or the way we teach it is, once I have like a deep connection, and I'm really clear about what I want and why I want it, right? The passion and the purpose. And I'm really maximizing my creativity, that naturally breeds some of these peak states. And so we can find flow and really find it on demand, flow with a group or, flow with one other person or flow when we're alone. And, flow is so beautiful, and in the book Flow, right? Csikszentmihalyi, greatest name ever, talks about the happiest people in the world, and are the ones who find the most flow. And he had a lot of research that he based that on, and it's like get this chemical cascade of good chemicals like oxycontin, dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins, all this other stuff, that serotonin that lasts for well past the flow. And and flow is phenomenal. That's how you get to really productive states too, because in flow, the internet stat, and if I read it on the internet, it has to be true, right? That's the rules. But pretty widely agreed on stat is that we get like a 500% increase of productivity in flow. If I'm getting 5 hours for every 1 hour I work, that's a deal I'll take all day long. And so that's really one of the keys to being productive.
I love that. Well, so many, I think, inspirational things and nuggets and words of wisdom that you shared in this episode. If you were going to share kind of one last or your favorite kind of wisdom tip that, you work on with your clients and that you love to share with people, what would that be?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. I'm going to give you a free one real quick. I would connect with Sammy if I was you guys, because she's really phenomenal at what she does and how she does it. She's a really cool woman in the green room. She was the same person, so she's authentic. So I would highly advise you taking advantage of her services. Number two, I would really be intentional about something that I work on every day, and that's being kind more than I'm right. And, I think that's such a great skill that we can all master. And a part of that is really just choosing love over fear as a matter of habit. And, when you're kind, that's really beautiful. And when you're right, somebody else is wrong. And that is definitely not going to create connection. So, just find ways to be kind and kind to yourself too. Kind to yourself, kind to other people, and, having grace, and just, we're all in this thing together.
I love what you're saying, because it leads towards personal growth, it leads towards your work growth. Like it leads towards who you are as a leader and as an employee or whatever it is that you're trying to do in your professional life. But just saying that it starts with us as individuals so that we can be the best versions of ourselves, I think is so critical right now, because I know so many people tend to separate the two as like, well, this is who I am in my work life and this is who I am in my personal life. But really, if we can just make, like, how much happier would we all be if we just kind of intermingled all of those and were true and authentic? I think it's such a beautiful message that you're sharing today. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, right back at you.
Well, Kevin, if people want to learn more about you, find out more about you, follow along with all the things that you're doing, how do they do that?
You could come over to my house and hang out on my couch and watch me work. No, you could go to Kevin Kepple on Instagram. I'd love to make new friends. So reach out, say hi. If I could help you, I'd love to. I know a lot of cool people and I love to connect great people. And my podcast is Unlock Your Freedom with Kevin Kepple if you want something else to listen to.
I love it. So you can check out all of the resources and information that were mentioned in this episode at thefirstclick.net/173. Kevin, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Sammy.
Thank you to Kevin for joining me today. If you loved this episode as much as I did, make sure you check out the show notes for those additional mentions and resources that he said. For now, I hope that you'll subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss out on a single episode. They all come out on Tuesdays. And leave us a 5-star review if you don't mind. I appreciate you taking your time to listen to this episode. Share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one.